Brian's a big Beatles fan, and the Beatles' first concept album was Sgt. Pepper. And I think of Chorus Key as Brian's Sgt. Pepper.
My favorite Beatles song is Yesterday.
Let It Be, because what a wonderful philosophy of life.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
The song would be All You Need Is Love.
My favorite Beatle is Paul.
George Harrison, the quiet intellectual one.
John Lennon.
I'm going to say Paul McCartney.
Many years ago when I was at university, I sang in an a cappella singing group called, despite the incredible nerdiness of the name, the MIT Logarithms. Now, 40 years on, my office Quadrangle Architects decided to form a rock band, which we called, of course, the Quadruplets, because there were 9 of us.
He came to Canada in high school. He came the year that the Leafs won their last Stanley Cup, and he remembers the parade when he came to Toronto. He finished high school here, and then he went to U of T, and then he finished up his architecture degree at the AA in London, which I think he was one of the favorite parts of his life. He loved being in London.
I met Brian in late 1985. Brian was a partner in the architectural firm of Curtner Brown Architects, and I, at that time, was a principal in the firm of Klein Taylor Goldsmith. Brian's partner, the late Alan Brown, had suggested that since he was leaving the practice of architecture to become a fancy schmancy developer, that he thought a wonderful idea would be to have Brian and me put our 2 firms together. We agreed to form a new firm out of the merger of our 2 firms. And instead of calling it Klein Taylor Goldsmith Curtner Brown Architects and Storm Door Company, we decided that we would call it Quadrangle. Brian was a unique people person. There was never a time when we were in a gathering, in a reception, at a party, when Brian was not the center of a group of people.
I was with Les Klein as his guest at a planning alumni dinner, and he walks me over to meet Brian, and there he was with his 1980s Giorgio Armani, just looking very suave.
I met Brian about 8 or 9 years ago when we were beginning the planning for the interiors of Chorus Key. We knew we had a real special opportunity on our hands, obviously a special location. It was really important to Waterfront Toronto that we get it right. It was really important to Jack Diamond, who designed the building, that we get it right. And we were really hoping that Brian Curtner was the architect to deliver our vision, and he certainly was.
He'd approach an idea without putting limits on it. He'd build on an idea, he'd sculpt it, he'd help you, he'd work with you. He would never start with the word no.
I remember one of the first briefings I had with Brian. At the time, I wasn't aware that he was an avid golfer. But I said to him, Brian, I'd like you to think about designing this building as though you were designing a golf course on the ocean. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you'd bring the water into play as much as possible. And if you go through Chorus Key, you'll see evidence of this everywhere you turn. Wave elements at the elevator shafts, waves in the terrazzo tile. There's waves that begin at a bench at the front door and extend through the atrium. There's reclaimed wood from the bottom of Lake Ontario that wraps around the atrium of Chorus Key.
Brian was a very passionate car racer. He loved BMWs. He raced cars on the track. Taking an old building and grafting on a new facade to it and displaying the cars inside of the facade. So as you drive by, you see these cars in the facade of the building as they're whizzing by it on the Don Valley. It was a good example of the kind of design work and design flair that he had.
He was able to turn everything that he did into an opportunity to get to know people. It was all about meeting people, getting to know people, and building great relationships.
I always felt like I got 2 men with Brian. I had the elegant businessman, and I had the outdoorsy guy who was playful and fun, and he was both those kinds of people. He loved to just let his beard grow and be a bit of a rough around the edges on the weekend. He did everything. He played squash, he played badminton, he skied, he sailed, he golfed. And whatever he did, he had to do it to the max. So he learned how to race cars, and then he had to teach cars. He learned how to sail, he had to sail in the world. He learned how to golf, he had to have, I don't know what the handicap was, but it had to be good. He just loved doing everything perfectly. He always told me, you only get this day once. So he packed it to the max. Weekends, we always had lists. Lists of what to buy, lists of what to do. How can you pack in golf and shopping and a party? It can all be done if you have a list. He loved surrounding himself with young people. That was really important to him. He loved their energy, he loved the new technologies, he loved the new ideas, and he felt by being with young people it kept him energetic.
I really admired that in Brian. He enjoyed that role of being a mentor, and he encouraged people to be mentors to other people.
We had a saying in our office. We always said, don't rest on your laurels. A little talk that I gave at a memorial for Brian, I told him that at this time, it's appropriate for him to rest on these laurels. And these are the kinds of laurels that he well deserves.
The sickness came with an aggressive force that you couldn't believe. And no matter what the news they gave him, he picked it up, he took it, he accepted it, and then he moved on. He accepted it with dignity and grace.
In thinking of Brian, my life is richer for knowing and working with him. Our city and community is richer for knowing and working with him. And he leaves a lasting legacy, both in the physical assets, but more importantly, in the people that he touched, groomed, helped, and worked with along the way.
Brian would have appreciated the NAIOP Directors Award because it's a recognition by his peers, by his colleagues, and by his clients and the industry for the body of work that he's done for so many years.
Brian Curtner is a very deserving recipient of the Rex Award. He deserved to be here in person to receive it. I wish he was.
As this day recognizes your contributions to NAIOP and to the profession and to the industry, I want to say thank you. No matter what I say, it will only be a small portion of the measure of gratitude that I have for you and the small portion of the measure of recognition that you deserve.
Brian would have been very honored by this legacy that you've left for him. He really treasured NAIOP in terms of the opportunities to be with his friends and his colleagues, and the fact that you've taken the time out to honor him and reflect on what he's contributed to the industry and what he's contributed to his city that he loved means very much to me and to his whole family. Thank you so much for this.